A Civilizational Reckoning by Lane Ellinger, Episode 1, Chapter 1. Islam Divides the World, the Doctrine of the Kafir, pages 1 to 10. In 1912, Reverend J.L. Menez wrote, "It is simply astonishing to see over 180 millions of the people of the globe quite ignorant of the true life and character of the Prophet of Islam. Over 100 years later, that number is now in the billions and still rising. Of equal concern, though, is how little is generally known about the belief system that is Islam. Given its rapid growth and influence in the world today, few subjects are more urgently in need of study. Islam's foundational texts, the Koran and Hadith, divide the world into believers and unbelievers, with non-Muslims marked as inferior and destined for subjugation. Understanding this dualistic structure is essential not only for Muslims, but for non-Muslims as well. 1. Preliminaries. The only two experts on Islam that truly matter are Allah and Muhammad. This is not opinion, it is doctrine, the source of Islamic belief, practice, and law. This book focuses on the teachings and practices that arise from them and concludes with draft legislation. What lies between reveals why such legislation is necessary. Sharia is not confined to Islamic states. Islamic law is not national law confined to Islamic states, as so many believe. It is religious law, and it goes wherever Muslims go. All Muslims are expected to abide by it, regardless of the country in which they reside. This law is also called Sharia, and it is not optional. It is integral to the practice of Islam, binding upon the believer by divine command. Koran 480. He who obeys the messenger, Muhammad, has obeyed Allah. Koran 33:36. It is not for a believing man or a believing woman to have any choice about their decision, unquote. Imams and mullahs are not religious leaders in the Western sense. They are rulers, commanders, and enforcers of Sharia. In Islam, where religion is law, there is no separation between the two. These men do not function as spiritual guides like Christian priests or Jewish rabbis. They are legal and political authorities, agents of religious governance whose doctrinal duty is not only to follow Sharia, but to impose it. In the West, Sharia may be enforced in a mosque or a home, but in Islamized countries, it may be enforced by the state and sometimes by a mob. For non-Muslims, Kafirs, understanding these texts is not about theology, but about policy, law, and survival, as they dictate how Muslims are commanded to interact with Kafirs. Ignoring this has left the West dangerously exposed to a belief system that seeks dominion over all others. The inescapable influence of the 7th century. Many find the Quran confusing because it is not arranged chronologically and assumes familiarity with other Islamic texts. These include the Hadith, collections of Muhammad's sayings and actions, and the Sirah, his biography. The Quran, alongside Muhammad's example, known as the Sunnah, forms the foundation for Sharia, Islamic law. Together, the Quran and Hadith, interpreted in the context of the Sirah, underpin Islamic jurisprudence. There are 6 authentic Hadith collections in Sunni Islam, including Bukhari, Muslim, Dawood, Tirmidhi, Al-Nasi, and Ibn Majah. The Shia have 4 such collections, with Al-Kafi being the most prominent. Hadith from other important collections, such as Musnad Ahmad, are frequently cited in Sharia manuals like Reliance of the Traveler and in Kafir. These are Quranic commentaries. The Quran commands Muslims to follow Muhammad's example, calling him an excellent pattern, Quran 33:21. Without understanding Muhammad's life, it is impossible to fully understand either the Quran or the legal system built upon it. In Mecca, Muhammad preached an intolerant but non-violent message for 13 years, gaining no more than 150 followers. Everything changed after his migration, Hijrah, to Medina, where he became a political leader, military commander, and lawgiver. Adopting jihad as a tool of expansion, Islam spread rapidly across the Arabian Peninsula within just 9 years. Chapter 8 of the Quran is called Al-Anfal, the spoils of war, and reflects this shift from persuasion to conquest. Jihad, both military and ideological, is not peripheral, but central to Islam, and has driven its global expansion for 1,400 years. Quote, A man came to Allah's messenger and said, "Instruct me as to such a deed as equals jihad in reward." Muhammad replied, "I do not find such a deed," unquote. Bukhari 2785. More than half of Islamic doctrine concerns the Kafir, making it political, not just religious. The Quran's later Medina verses, which are more militant, supersede earlier, more tolerant Meccan ones. Quran 2106. Whatever a verse do we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring a better one or similar to it. Throughout history, efforts to modernize or reform Islam, often by secularizing Islamic countries, have collapsed under the weight of foundational doctrine that authorizes, empowers, and rewards the enforcers. Iran, under the Shah, became increasingly secular, but the 1979 Islamic Revolution reinstated Sharia, reflecting the gravitational pull of Muhammad's original template. Islam's built-in mechanism for renovation reinforces this. Hadith: Allah will raise for this community at the end of every 100 years the one who will renovate its religion for it. Dawud 42:91. This is not reform towards modernity, but a return to core doctrine, a kind of factory reset, making true reform doctrinally forbidden. Hadith: the worst of things are those that are newly invented. Every newly invented thing is an innovation. And every innovation is going astray. And every going astray is in the fire. An-Nasi 1578. Discarding the Hadith or revising them is doctrinally impossible. The Hadith define the example of Muhammad. Even the 5 pillars of Islam rely on his actions, and the life story of a dead man cannot be changed. To change the Hadith is to change Islam. No one has the authority to do that, certainly not according to traditional Islam. The Quran declares itself perfect, Quran 2:2, and Muhammad's guidance is the best, Bukhari 1698. Changing doctrine is prohibited. Whoever changes his religion, then kill him, Bukhari 69:22. No universal human rights. Islamic doctrine is dualistic. There is no universal standard of rights or morality. One set of rules applies to Muslims, another to Kafirs, one for men, another for women. Meccan verses counsel patience when Islam is weak. Medina verses, when Islam is strong, command violence and supremacy and abrogate the earlier ones. Rights are not equal. Male Muslims enjoy privileges denied to women, and non-Muslims under Sharia. Status determines worth. Justice is not blind. It is tiered by status and belief. Hadith: Muhammad said, "None of you will have faith till he wishes for his Muslim brother what he likes for himself." Bukhari 13. Conversely, Quran 8:12. "I will cast terror into the hearts of those who have disbelieved, so strike them over the necks and smite all over their fingers and toes." In non-Islamic societies, some Muslims advocate for reform, a stance only possible because they live in the West, where free speech offers protection that is absent in Islamic countries. These reformers are often supported by well-meaning non-Muslims who assume that because many Muslims are kind and decent, the doctrine must also be benign and capable of change. But this confuses people with ideology. The foundational text remained unchanged and unchangeable. Fear plays a role. Criticism of doctrine is criminalized in many Muslim-majority countries such as Pakistan or Iran, where even a social media post can lead to prison, flogging, or death. Historically, non-Muslims were forbidden access to Islamic texts. Reliance of the Traveler, classic manual of Sharia law, quote, "When one fears that a non-Muslim may touch the Quran, then one must pick it up if there is no safe place for it." Today, over 80% of Muslims are not fluent in Arabic, so translations of the Quran and Hadith have become widely available. Recommended English versions, Halali Khan, Sahih International, Pickthall, and Yusuf Ali, generally align with classical interpretations. Yet in the West, Islamic doctrine is often presented through a distorted lens, filtered by institutions and advisors who sanitize its teachings for public consumption. Because Islamic law applies across all aspects of life, certain doctrinal passages will appear more than once throughout this book. This is intentional. It reflects both their centrality to Sharia and their relevance in multiple domains, legal, political, and societal. This book is built on Islam's core doctrinal texts, recognized by both Imam and Jihadi alike. Chapter 1, Section 2, The Making of the Quran. Muslims are often taught that the Quran contains the unaltered words of Allah delivered through the angel Gabriel and spoken by Muhammad, Allah's messenger. These words, they are told, have been perfectly preserved, yet the historical and textual record tells a more complex story. Variations and corrections do exist, not merely across translations, but within the Arabic recitations themselves. This is well known among Islamic scholars, though rarely acknowledged outside academic circles. The word Quran is derived from roots meaning to recite and to gather, and refers specifically to the revelations attributed to Muhammad and recorded in the Quran. Both spellings, Quran and Quran, with a K or a Q, are correct, reflecting the lack of standardized transliteration from Arabic into English. According to Islamic tradition, the Quran was first compiled into a single collection by Abu Bakr, the first caliph. This initial compilation was prompted by fear that Muhammad's recitations would be lost, as many of those who had memorized them were being killed in battle. At the time, verses were written on palm stalks, bones, and stones. Later, the third caliph, Uthman, recognized discrepancies between recitations and ordered a standardized version to be compiled, organized, and written as a book. The rest were burned. Manuscripts comprised of the second compilation were then distributed. However, parts of the supposedly perfectly preserved revelations were lost, including one eaten by a sheep while stored under Aisha's bed. Aisha was one of Muhammad's wives. Hadith. Uthman sent to every Muslim province one copy of what they had copied and ordered that all the other Quranic materials, whether written in fragmentary manuscripts or whole copies, be burnt. Bukhari 4987. Hadith, Ibn Maha, 1944. It was narrated that Aisha said, "The verse of stoning and of breastfeeding an adult 10 times was revealed, and the paper was with me under my pillow. When the messenger of Allah died, we were preoccupied with his death, and a tame sheep came in and ate it." Quran 15:9. Indeed, it is we, Allah, who sent down the Quran, and indeed we will be its guardian. Unquote. Instead of eliminating alternate versions, by the second century of Islam, the variant readings of the Quran were more in number than before Uthman's attempt to unify the text. The compilation process remained incomplete and contested. Uthman himself reportedly kept a copy of Hafsa's codex, and other companions retained their own personal codices. The new Uthmanic version was not dotted. It lacked diacritical marks on consonants, and for that reason required prior knowledge to interpret correctly. Meanwhile, Shiite sources accused both Abu Bakr and Uthman of tampering with the Quran. Owing to numerous variations discovered in the Quranic texts used in state schools, the Egyptian government issued its own. In 1924, the Royal Cairo edition, standardized Quran, was approved by the Al-Azhar Committee, and many pre-1924 Qurans were dumped in the Nile. This is the most widely used version globally today, especially by Sunni Muslims. Standardization and variant readings. There are 10 recognized Qiraat, various variant readings, of the Quran, of which Warsh and Hafs, the Cairo edition versions, are the most widely used today. Variations include differences in word choice, grammar, syntax, and the application of these diacritical marks, which were absent from the earliest manuscripts. During the period of the Quran's transmission, Syro-Aramaic functioned as the regional lingua franca, while classical Arabic, as later formalized, did not yet exist. People communicated in Aramaic and various local Arabic dialects, many of which were not mutually intelligible. Semitic script originally consisted of only consonants and lacked the diacritical marks needed to clarify pronunciation and meaning. Consequently, the beautiful translucent perpetual virgins of paradise, called Huris, in Quran 44:54, promised to those who die in the cause of Allah or jihad, could be interpreted either as, "We will wed them," the believers, to Huris with big eyes, or "We will provide them with jewel-like grapes." Some recitations of the Quran were uttered in Mecca, others after the migration to Medina. Because the Quran is not presented in chronological order, there are disputes over whether certain verses originated in Mecca or Medina. There are also alternate arrangements of the Quran and variations in the number of chapters. The Cairo edition contains 114 chapters, surah. The Codex of Ibn Masud omits Quran 118 and 114 and does not include Quran 1, resulting in 111 surahs. By contrast, the Codex of Ubay ibn Ka'b adds 2 chapters but combines 2 others, bringing his total to 115. An excellent book by Daniel Brubaker titled Corrections in Early Quran Manuscripts, 20 Examples, tactfully presents 20 documented instances of altered texts, complete with photographs. Mr. Brubaker has examined thousands of pages of Quranic manuscripts and personally inspected original vellum documents showing script without punctuation, with words inserted, removed, written over, or added in the margins. He notes frequent omission of the word Allah in the lower text. He comments that such corrections may represent a pious enhancement of Quran's textual history, hagiography, the enhancement of a history in order to elevate its subject. Mr. Brubaker originally documented 800 such corrections for his dissertation and has since recorded thousands, quote, with no end in sight. Quran 6:115. The words of the Lord are perfect in truth and justice. There is none who can change his words. Quran 2:106. Whatever a verse, revelation do we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring a better one or similar to it. Know you not that Allah is able to do all things? Quran 16:106. When we substitute one revelation for another, and Allah knows best what he reveals in stages, they say, Thou art but a forger, but most of them understand not. In addition, there are 29 standalone letters at the beginning of several surah that no one has been able to explain. Yet the Quran claims to possess perfect clarity and asserts that no writing can rival its beauty. These claims are undermined by its irregular grammar, repetitiveness, contradictions, and lack of coherence. For example, the standalone letters are sometimes treated as verses in their own right. Alif Lam Mim is counted as the first verse of Surah 2. Quran 2:1, Alif Lam Mim. These letters are one of the miracles of the Quran, and none but Allah alone knows their meaning. Quran 1788. If the whole of mankind and jinn were to gather together to produce the like of this Quran, they could not produce the like thereof, even if they backed up each other with help and support. Quran 10:38. Or do they say he invented it? Say, then bring forth a surah like it, and call upon for assistance whomever you can besides Allah, if you should be truthful. Unquote. At the time of Muhammad, his revelations were already being questioned. One notable example is his scribe, Abdullah bin Sa'd, who later apostatized and returned to Mecca. He had claimed that he was able to modify the revelations with Muhammad's approval. When Muhammad returned to conquer Mecca, he ordered Abdullah killed. Quote, among them was Abdullah bin Sa'd, brother of bin Amir Luay. The reason he ordered him to be killed was that he had been a Muslim and used to write down revelation. Then he apostatized and returned to the Quraysh, unquote. Disputes over correct recitation also arose during Muhammad's lifetime, prompting reciters to seek clarification directly from him. Hadith, Muhammad said, Gabriel recited the Quran to me in one way, then I requested him to read it in another way, and continued asking him to recite it in other ways, and he recited it in several ways till ultimately he recited it in 7 different ways. Bukhari 4991. Far from resolving confusion, these overlapping recitations and shifting contexts laid the groundwork for selective quoting and widespread misrepresentation, especially in the West, where doctrinal background is rarely known. Some of the most cited Quranic verses are those that appear peaceful on the surface, but carry very different meanings when placed in historical or chronological context.